be the evaluator today for David, and I'm using Masa's form to evaluate you. I hope that's okay. With that, I return back to our Toastmaster, Kathleen.
Okay. Our speaker today is David Stadelhofer. He is reprising a speech he's given before where we had several technical difficulties, and I hope he's worked them out or dumped them. Because of course, this is a good place to practice so that when when he actually charges for his presentations, then he knows that he actually practiced here, right, with us. So is this the Martin Luther King speech? Okay, so this is a subject we're all familiar with. And so let's give a round of applause to David Stadelhofer. What's the name of your speech?
The name of my title of my speech is, Does Martin Luther King Jr.'s Legacy Matter?
Okay, does his legacy matter? Thank you. So David Stadelhofer, does Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy matter?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. According to the U.S. Census done in 2018, the average household income, they give a report based on different races. And I'm going to read off a few of the statistics. For the highest bracket of is actually Asians. Asians are the highest income producing households, averaging in 2018 for an annual income, it's $86,000. $86,000 average. Next comes whites. Whites got paid $66,000 average household income. Next, Spanish, $50,000. That's $50,000 per household. And last but not least on the list is blacks, who were paid $44,000 on the average per year household income. So by these numbers, we can understand that African Americans in the United States still are much less prosperous than other races. Actually, it was a little bit worse prior to the civil rights movement in the 1950s, 1940s, 1930s. Blacks, especially in the South, were impoverished. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. A now famous Black minister named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rose up in the late 1950s and together with what was called the Civil Rights Movement, a movement that called for the fair treatment of Black people who were victims of systemic racism, especially in southern states. Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement gained attention on the national level, maybe worldwide level, as they addressed this social evil, took action, and made great gains. They did protests and they did rallies. And while they were doing that, they were opposed brutally by the police, many times brutally, not always. Fierce opposition from the politicians and even from their own ranks of blacks who said, this is too much. We shouldn't do this. This is too scary. But because of the fierce opposition, the whole country caught the attention of the entire country. And there was a resonance, I think, that the protesters made. Their cause touched the conscience of the American people. And finally, from that came the Civil Rights Act that was passed in Congress and signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1964. And that Civil Rights Act made it illegal to discriminate based on, that is, discriminate in a set of public settings or in businesses and schools and other areas. It's illegal to discriminate based on race and a few other protected categories, nationality, and the how can we, I'd like to ask everybody, how can we characterize Dr. King's leadership abilities that helped him become so successful? And he, by the way, I say that he's successful because if you check, you Google, who is the greatest American? And many times it comes up, maybe Dr. Martin Luther King is not first, but he's up there. There's one survey that's posted on Wikipedia. And it was a survey done by another institution and where there millions of people were surveyed. And out of that, Martin Luther King came in third. First with Ronald Reagan, and then also Abraham Lincoln, then there's Martin Luther King, and then some other presidents. But how striking. All these presidents, and then this one young, he was young. Martin Luther King lived to be only 39 years old. But he came out of obscurity in some ways, a small church, Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. And he became known throughout the world. What made him so successful, do you think? I'm not going to wait for your answer because it's not an interactive speech right now. They're just kind of, making a rhetorical question. You could say, well, maybe because he was a great orator. Well, he was a great orator. He gave great speeches. But so many dictators also give great speeches. Conniving politicians and lawyers give great speeches. But they're not remembered as being the greatest American. He was educated. But so many other people who are educated, professors and whatnot, they're not recognized. They never became known as the greatest American. Also, he was brave. But there are many brave people. The criminals are very brave and daring. They just last week, and where I worked, somebody broke right in the middle of the night, cut through thick bars, and stole 8 of our catalytic converters right from under our noses. I don't know how they did it, but they were brave. I mean, if they got caught, they'd be thrown in prison, or I don't know, here in LA with it. But anyway, so what is it that was different about Martin Luther King? I'm giving my own opinion, but I think that it's based on what I've heard from other people. And one of them is that he had a vision for what America should be. It comes through in his speeches, like in the I Have a Dream speech, which all of us may be familiar with. He's given a speech when he's in his last sermon he ever gave. He went to the mountaintop and he had a vision from the mountaintop. So he had a vision of what America should be. And he had a deep conviction from that vision about the rights and dignity of all people, that all rights and dignity, all people have rights and dignities, that it comes from God. It's a God-given right, and which can never be taken away. And somehow that has resonated with the American people. We know it is true. And Martin Luther King has often in the past quoted the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going to one quote. I think he says it in his "I Have a Dream" speech. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that men are created equal. All men are created equal. That they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that tidbit from the Declaration of Independence, Martin Luther King, I think, hooked on to that, and that resonated with him. He advocated also for nonviolence. There were other groups at that time who were not like that. You know, there's kind of a parallel in some ways between that and Jesus. You know, during Jesus' time, there was many people, the Barabbas people, who had advocated violent overthrow of the Roman government, which they would never have been able to succeed, but they were like that. And at the same time as Martin Luther King, and there was communists among the civil rights movement as well, who kind of were like piggybacking on the popularity of the civil rights movement, and they certainly advocated violence. But Martin Luther King never did. He advocated nonviolence, and it was modeled after, he was inspired by the model of Gandhi in India, who successfully, where the Indians had successfully freed themselves from the dominion from England through nonviolent protest. Martin Luther King advocated nonviolence and to treat all people with respect. That's the true Christian way. That resonated with Americans. And it empowered the people that he was working with. They felt a sense of, I'm only kind of thinking how I would have been at that time. If my leader was saying, be nonviolent, to respect the other person, somehow it would give me power and brave. I'd feel daring because I'm in the right. And I think he was able to inspire people during his time to take, to risk their safety. I can't imagine going into a restaurant where you know you're not welcome and sit down and say, I'd like some bacon and eggs. And then and know that you're going to be not served, but not moved. They're called sit-ins. Or to march across a bridge and be faced with police with dogs and fire hoses. So he brought these values. And I mentioned that there's other militants during his time, and one of them was the Black Panther. Black Panthers, I think, were later, but I didn't they have hardly any success compared to the civil rights movement. They only actually alienated people more, didn't build bridges, it didn't bring sympathy, didn't bring any results. So the question I would like I'd like to ask the rhetorical question: is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s message relevant for today? Or is it, I'm not Black. Is it relevant to me? Is it relevant to most of us are not Black? Is it relevant to us? The Blacks are free now, right? No, actually, they're still very relevant today. Martin Luther King's message is more relevant today than it has ever been. Because America still has a dream that has not been fulfilled. There should be a land harmony. That's what Martin Luther King preached, where young Black children and young white children could stand and play together hand in hand. And the vision, American dream that Martin Luther King had was that America could be a land of harmony among races, nationalities, and cultures, and showing an example to the rest of the world, which is also needing some kind of unity. But as long as Blacks and other ethnic groups are still disadvantaged or mistreated, and that was one clear point Martin Luther King cited. If America is mistreating its own people, namely the Blacks, how can it represent and show its face to the rest of the world? And he was concerned, actually, for America. He was a great guy. Martin Luther King was a great, great man. I don't know if you've listened to some of his interviews where he's interviewed by one reporter. And he is authentic. His answers are so right on the money. He's so articulate, but he keeps himself calm. He's just a good guy. I've seen footage of him giving a graduation speech for a junior high school, I think it is, and he's advising the Blacks, or all Blacks, about being not trying to get out of being Black. You are Black, and you should be proud, and you have a dignity and all. Ephraim is standing upside down. There he goes. Our job is not done, brothers and sisters. I sound like I'm back in the church. Brothers and sisters, our job is not done. As long as Blacks or any other ethnic group are still disadvantaged, then King's American dream is not completed. We have to go and we have to be nonviolent. It's too easy to go and smash some windows and think you're actually accomplishing something. We have to respect people, regardless of their race. We don't return hate with hate. We return love with hate. That's the winner. That's the victor, internal victor. What can you do? What can we do? Well, we can give equal opportunities in jobs, in education, in social interaction. No one, telling you to get on your knees and pretend to be humble, but at least you can be a decent human being by including all people in your sphere of relationships. We have a duty as God's children to have charity to others, no matter who they are. Even Putin, we have to love and forgive. And all the politicians, I got my stuff. It's getting a preaching mood. So eventually we can and will overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Does everybody know that song? That's all you have to. Maybe it shows my age that I know that song.
Overcome someday.
That was the theme song of the Civil Rights Movement, and they would sing that song as they marched along the streets. So, since my green light hasn't come, I have plan A, B. And that is to show you a few pictures here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And what we have here, okay. This is an example of the It's called the Jim Crow laws. This is a picture in the South where the drinking fountains are segregated between whites and colored. In other words, and the white drinking fountain is obviously a little better than the colored drinking fountain. And if colored, quote unquote, colored people were forced to drink from that, if that gentleman there decided to go drink from the other drinking fountain, he would be beaten down or possibly arrested. Here we see a picture of the busing. This is a real picture. This is all the white people are, the black people are regulated to the back of the bus. They have to sit there. They if white people show up, they got to give up their seat and go to the back of the bus. That was a law. And here, this is one of my favorite, I can't know favorite, but memorable pictures for me is a tall white guy. I'm a tall white guy. And so I feel so bad to see this tall white guy. This is a registrar for the city, and the people, they're asking the registrar about the voting procedures, and he's pointing his finger at them and saying, "None of your business." Oh, it just kills me to see this picture. Which just demonstrates the type of indignities and humiliations that the civil rights activists faced. But because they were so filled with the spirit, so to speak, and a sense of hope for the future, they can endure such indignations. Here's a picture of Rosa Parks. She started almost started the civil rights movement, where she refused to give up her seat. The white guy was shocked. What was going on? And they called the police. She was arrested. And that began, the blacks decided to boycott the buses, and that threw everybody into confusion. What was going on here? And finally, the bus company capitulated and took away that rule. And the civil rights movement gained recognition and started gaining momentum. Here, there's a march, Martin Luther King in the middle, and they're marching through certain towns, demanding civil rights. Here, there's a picture of this is like an advertisement, but this is Lyndon Johnson here shaking hands with Martin Luther King, recognizing, giving recognition to him as really the force behind the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Let me unshare here. Let me see if I have any more picture. No. So I'm going to unshare. Oh, I'm yellow. I got a yellow color. Okay. So what can we do? So anyway, we have to remember Martin Luther King's spirit of nonviolence. There's a lot to do, and we have a responsibility as good citizens to make America's dream come true. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, David, for your reprisal of your I Have a Dream speech on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.